Hello, hello. Yeah.
That way. How's that? Is that okay? Not great.
We'll make it work.
Okay.
We'll make it work.
Because wherever you
And I
want.
can't believe there's no volume on this.
You
Okay.
know what?
Volume, like, yeah.
There was a game, but I don't know if that's going to. As you can see, it's not.
Okay. All right. We'll make it work. Thank you.
Anything else? I think that
I believe that's it. Is this
this
volume?
is what it came in.
Oh, so
I'll
just
pop
put
it
this
in.
back in there and pop it in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
Is there a way that I turn it on? Oh, okay. It says on and
yeah,
off. Okay.
off there, and you're set.
And I share this information with them about the date changes, or the topics
Yeah,
change?
that probably would be helpful to mention. I think Ross mentioned as well, but we might have new people.
Okay. Okay.
Does it make sense?
These topics switched.
I think
Review
originally general science was in this slot and physics was in this slot.
Okay.
So they flip-flopped.
Right.
All right,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you so much. Good seeing you.
My pleasure. It's great seeing you, too.
Tell Kelly we said hello. And then we miss her. Okay. All right. Take care. Have a good one.
That you're writing a really important email to a colleague.
Release those endorphins. Get up and dance now. Okay, welcome. Please make sure that you signed in and that you have all the materials. And tell me if this is too loud. I'm kind of testing this because I don't like using it. So if it's kind of awkward for you, then that's fine because it's kind of awkward for me. Pass that one down, sir. I hope I have enough of these. You're welcome. Are there two or three? I think I'm gonna run out of these. Made it. I think we made it. You're welcome. No! Say it's not true! We're one short. I'm so sorry. If you can just share for today, it's just a visual. Oh, you got it? There you go. Okay. Welcome to the NLN workshop for the verbal section. My name is Marvin Hobson. I am Associate Professor of English here, and I've actually been doing this workshop since its inception. So it's been a long time trying to get you all to become nurses. We need you out there, okay? So I'm so happy to be here with you this evening. The information, I'll just tell you a little bit about the packet that you have before you. The idea of the packet is for you to get introduced or probably reintroduced to some of the basic concepts that are involved in your course or in your test. So we actually reviewed the test. Those of us who have not even thought about being nurses, not even considered the nursing field from an academic perspective, really took a close look at your exam and tried to, at the time, we were actually teaching reading, so that's why they sought us out. I have a master's degree in reading, but never kind of looked at and analyzed a high stakes test like this. I mean, we think FCAT was probably the highest stakes test that I'd ever evaluated before this. So this was a challenge for me to look at this test, to see how comprehensive it is, and to see how challenging it is for quite a few students in order to get through this exam. I have been on sabbatical for a little while, so I haven't done this for a couple of sessions. So I kind of did some more research in order to get my feet wet again with it, and found out that through the most recent studies, and also since they've slightly changed the test, I think it's easier, but maybe not, so don't get so excited about that. Because it used to be, I believe if my memory serves me correctly, and those of you who have taken it before, please correct me, 80 questions at 60 minutes, where now it's 60 questions at 40 minutes. So it's still challenging. Still challenging, but I believe that you all are going to be up for the challenge, and the hope is that some of the information that we put together for you here would help you in some way. Something that I found through my research is that they are finding that the verbal section is the most difficult, which I thought was kind of crazy, right? But they're finding that potential nurses who are taking the test are having the greatest problems with the verbal section. So good thing that you're here today. I hope that you will benefit from what we have. So the idea of those concepts you see on the very first page. If you can look at the very first page of the packet, there are page of the packet, you will find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Please help me out with my math because I'm not a math person. So you have 5 concepts: main idea, significant details, vocabulary, tone and purpose, and then inference questions. These are all the kinds of questions that you will be finding on the exam or on the NLN exam. So the idea of the packet is for you to get reintroduced to these concepts, because maybe, or I'm hoping many of you have already learned of these, but maybe have never seen them in this context. So to be kind of introduced to those concepts on an easier level, right? So the passages that we have within those are at about high school level, so that you can quickly see how these concepts work, and then we hope that they will transfer to the very difficult NLN test. Okay, and so we'll do 2 practice tests for the NLN, 2 practice passages today as well, to kind of get your feet wet. Can I see the hands of those who have taken it before already? All right, a good number of you. So please help me if I am misconstruing some information, because you are the experts. You've actually taken it, and your input is invaluable for a session like this. Okay? So let's go ahead and open them up. And you will see there's a passage there, passage number 73, entitled Helpful or Harmful. And you can go ahead and quickly read that. And we have some questions that will follow on this as well. This is from, and talking about we'll talk about strategies and things that you can do to improve your reading. One thing that you can do in order to prepare for this reading section is to just read. That's what a lot of the research is saying, and it doesn't really matter what you read. But this is a nice text that they have in our lab called Reading in the Content Areas, and this is the science portion, so it's some really short and sweet science related. They have one for math, they have one for social studies, but these are science-related sections or passages based on reading comprehension. So it might, for those of you who find this helpful, you might want to go and just grab this book in our ASC. They have several copies of these. They're both different from this because they are different editions, but you might want to see if you can get your hands on one of these and just practice some of the passages in there. So we're going to practice this one passage. Go ahead and read it. I'll give you a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes, and then I'll ask you the questions that are associated with this passage. See if you can identify which one of those three sentences. Can we read those? Yeah. Represent the main idea of this. Okay, so go ahead and take your time to do that. Take a few seconds. Right. Any other options here? Could be A. Any takers for C? All right, the answer is B. Okay, the answer is B for this. Okay, let's take a look at these questions very quickly. And then we'll go over it. Okay, what do we think about the answers for these? For number 2, another good title for this passage would be, okay, let's see, hands for those who say A. No one. Okay, B. B as in boy. C, 2 for C, and D. Okay, majority does rule here. What about number 3? I hear D, I hear B. Anyone for A or C? No one? Yes, majority seems to rule here too. This is B, as in boy. And lastly, number 4. Number 2 is D. Number 3 is B as in boy. Bravo. And number 4. B as well. Okay. So let's go back very quickly to the main idea question, because that's, I believe, where we're going to start with kind of looking at this as an overall concept. So one of these is too broad and too narrow. That's one way you can kind of distinguish between these two. So we have A, that is too broad, right? Radiation is all around us. That is very general, not specific to this particular article or passage at all. So one thing that you can use for this particular passage in order to determine or distinguish these options is to look at the title. From what I remember, I do not believe that you guys have titles, right, for this. So that's one option that you do not have there. But of course, you can look to see if there are some biased words utilized throughout the introductory paragraph in order to kind of get a sense of what that author's main idea is. And it should be found somewhere in that first paragraph in most cases. C is too narrow. High doses of radiation disrupt the molecular structure of a body's tissues. So I don't know if, whether it's true or not, but is that mentioned in the text at all, and is it specified in that great detail? Okay, so those are just questions that you can kind of ask yourself. All right, so that's main idea. Let's go to your next section here. This is sort of like a pretest to see how you would do on the NLN without having taken this particular session. So now you'll have an opportunity to look at an actual NLN passage. So we put these in juxtaposition so you can see these side by side. One at probably high school level or even lower passage, and then your very advanced college level reading passage for the NLN. So I'll go ahead and time you, because on the NLN you would have probably less than 8 minutes per passage. So I will time you on this particular passage, and you can go ahead and start now. You are at 4 minutes now, so you should be like working towards halfway completed with this passage by now, right? Okay, this isn't a group test. We want to see that you know how to answer these questions. So you have 2.5 minutes. You have less than a minute. Okay, that is time. All right. Go ahead and end there. Those are your answers. So go ahead and grade yourself. How did that feel? All right, those 8 minutes for that one passage. Was it intense? Was it? Okay, so that's the idea for you to get a sense of how it will be on the test, right? You will not have time to read each and every word. Yes. Roughly. Roughly. Exactly, but you don't have time to read it all. Exactly. Exactly. And you have about 6 or 7 of these passages? Yeah. So, yeah, you have to really be mindful of your time. The other dynamic that is different, right, is that you're using a paper, and it is a computerized test. So that's another issue logistically that you have to kind of be mindful of, making sure that you use that scrap paper as effectively as you possibly can, that you are maybe numbering those paragraphs so that if you need to go back to do certain things, you have a systematic way of doing that. And there are some suggestions we'll give you about that before we leave. Yes. I'm not sure about that. Yeah. And can you flip? Can you flip back and forth? Can you flip back and forth? Oh, you can. So that's good. So you can flip from the passage to the question. That's good. Yeah. Yeah, it goes by really quickly. And we'll get into the suggestions, but since we're kind of already talking about it, one of the suggestions has been to see if you can read the questions first, and then figure out what kinds of questions they're asking. If you can read those questions first, then maybe you can go and answer some of those questions, those immediate questions. The other handout that I gave you where it talked about right here questions, those are the kinds of questions that you want to answer immediately, that you could like point to on the page. Those you want to answer immediately. When it comes to an inference question, those you have to think about a little bit. So those you might not be able to point to and answer. So you've got to process those a little bit better. Okay, everyone got their results for this? What do you think? Number 8 seems completely wrong. Okay, probably one of the most difficult kinds of questions is the inference question. So when we review that quickly, make sure that you, make sure that you, it's not going to say it. An inference question means that you are inferring from your brain. You are inferring based on the information that you have in front of you. It's not a right there question where you can point to it and get that results. So, right here. In which paragraph? One, two, three, four. Oh, okay. Oh, yes. Yeah. On parasites. Yeah. So another thing here, and we'll of course get to this, is the transitional phrases. So that's something that would have helped with that particular question as well. Let's go to the next section, and we're actually going to work on vocabulary right here. So let's look at that section. So this just gives us some information about vocabulary. There are quite a few vocabulary questions throughout. So vocabulary that consists of all of the words that are in your understanding by an individual or person that you know and that you use on a regular basis. And then what's the next item here? And then context clues. Is that on this slide? No. So context clues are words that are surrounding a particular word that you may not understand. So those are the words that are around that particular word. And then synonyms and antonyms, most people understand those or know about those. But this is really cool information when it talks about how we develop our vocabulary over time and what helps us to do that. By the age of 18, you have over 60,000 words in your vocabulary, and through college, you get additional words, of course, added. So this is what you need to know if you were writing down anything or highlighting anything. I would write down this SAGE method, right? S-A-G-E. So looking for these synonyms in the text. So when you're asked a vocabulary question or when a vocabulary question comes up and you do not understand it, one method that you can use is the SAGE by looking for any synonyms that are around that particular sentence or surrounding that particular word, any antonyms, right? If they're saying what that word is not, then of course you could use that as a way to try and determine what the meaning is. And then using some general context, some information that they're giving you around that particular text, and then of course examples as it gives you particular exemplars of what that word might do or how it's used in a specific way. You have examples of those on that page, so definitely make sure that you highlight those, take a look at those, and see how you can train yourself, you could say, in order to identify words that you don't know that might be on the test. If you flip to the next page, when it talks about using word parts to figure out a new word, so this is really somewhere where you can make some strides as well, learning new words, especially medical terminology. So learning the use of roots and prefixes and suffixes. We've provided for you on that next page, right after that, some of the commonly used words and prefixes. I think if I were updating this packet, I would change it to some of the most commonly used medical terminology that might appear, or science, health-related terminology, but that's something that you could easily access online. But these prefixes, suffixes, and roots would give you a lot of assistance in trying to figure out what these words mean. Okay, so let's take a look at the next page where you have some practice on this, and let's just try a couple of these, maybe 1 through 4 in that first passage, and then we'll go on so that we can work on some other items. But do 1 through 4 on that next page so you can get some vocabulary practice there. We see there the answers to number 1 is B, harmful. So adverse means harmful. Another thing we can look at is eliminator questions, what kinds of questions they are. We'll take a look at those also today too, looking at the different kinds of questions. There's always going to be that eliminator question or that distractor question, so you want to make sure you can throw those out. And then an opposite question. So we have helpful and harmful together, long-term and short-term. So this is B. Number 2, identifying the context clues you used, and these are synonyms, because those are synonyms used there, or antonyms used in the items, but those are synonyms. And then don't be slothful or lazy, be diligent in your work habits. What does diligent mean? And that's A, hardworking. You should have known that. And then identify the context clue you used there, and that would be antonym. Okay? Yeah. 4 was B. B-A-A-B. Yeah. Yeah, because it's saying lazy and slothful, and the opposite of lazy and slothful is diligent. Okay? All right. Let's go to the next item, which is purpose. This just tells us more about context clues and our prefixes, the different kinds of prefixes. Why is it skipping around here? And purpose. Okay. So these are the least amount of questions I believe that you will get here. What I like here in this bottom section or in the center of the page here is general and specific purposes. So if you see some of those words, those will help you to determine what they're asking you. So we know a lot of this information, or a lot of the passages are to inform. You will not get passages that are to entertain. You may get a passage that's to persuade, right? To talk about, to persuade you over one procedure or method versus the other. So entertaining is not one that you would have here, but definitely informing and possibly persuading. So, you know, the terms there or the words that they're using underneath there will help you to decide how that's done or how that works out. If you flip over, I'm going to read this passage to you, and then we're going to do questions 1 through 4. It says, Tony's place is crammed into a tiny building next to the Fine Arts Theater. The owners offer a menu of Italian food. They've got the checkered tablecloths, dim lights, and crusty bread. They also know how to make a hearty red sauce. Too bad they use it to drown delicate fish. They also seem to lace everything with truckloads of garlic. The service needs some work, too. Our waiter didn't know what the specials were, nor did he think to refill our water glasses before we asked. With a combination of fake-friendly chatter and outright nagging, he made us order, finish up, and clear out. He seemed to see us only as automatic tip machines. The food and low prices bring the customers in the door. The service should not push them out. Okay? What's the tone of this passage? Right, extremely critical of, this place. I don't want to go there tonight after we finish. Number 2, the writer says he seemed to see us only as an automatic tip machine, or as tip machines. The tone of this sentence is definitely sarcastic in front of that. The writer's main purpose is all right, very good. This is B. Okay, caution to entertain the reader. Number 4, in which sentence does the author use exaggeration to make a point about the food? C, they also seem to lace everything with the truckloads of garlic. Okay? So these are talking about the tones that are represented. You have some major examples of tone there in the center. Some of these might play out in the passages that you are given. All right? Got. I think we're going to main idea now. So, main idea, one that you will definitely receive throughout. This little chart here just shows you the difference between deductive sentence structure, and paragraph structure versus inductive. Basically, what you need to know for this is that that main idea could appear anywhere in that first paragraph. It could occur anywhere there. It could be in the first sentence. It could be in the middle. It could be in the end. You have to kind of know how to search for it. So under here, it says how to find the topic. Ask yourself the question, what or who is this paragraph about? Like, what is the intended, who is the intended audience? To whom are they writing? And what are they writing about? And then get more specific. This is one of those moments where you definitely, if you find a main idea question, you want to identify that question early on and determine who's talking there and what are they trying to discuss, and determine if one is broad or one is more narrow than the other. It says also to ask yourself the question, what is the overall message or argument being made by the author about the topic of this passage? So what would be their overall argument? What are they trying to persuade you to see, to understand, to reflect upon? And then those should be followed up with supporting details. So they should have some points that follow that up. I always say to my students, you have to back that thing up. You've got to support that idea with information and with supporting details. And there might be some hints to that as well. So boldface, I don't know if they, on the electronic version of the test, if there is any bolding, but if there is, or highlighting, underlining, then those would be indicators of hints to supporting details or main ideas supporting your or the author's argument. All right, if you flip the page, you'll see that is yet another kind of way for us understanding how your topic sentence, your main idea, and your supporting details will flow. We have a paragraph that has been broken up into some pieces there about Florida vegetation. It says, Florida is full of beautiful scenery, but the vegetation is exceptionally exquisite. And then they give 3 examples of it: the royal palm, the hibiscus, and surrounding name, the saw palmetto. So they are giving those examples. So try to see if you can break up your sentences. You do not have the privilege of writing on the paper like you do here today. So you definitely want to make sure that you can do some of this organizing of your ideas while you are reading the passage, if you can make some time for that. All right, let's go to the next page and just look at that first passage and see if you can answer those 3 questions about main idea. Okay, what do we have for this one? For number 1? Yeah, it's definitely about those fire ants. And then 2, what does the author want you to know about the topic? D. Okay, I thought I heard some B's out there. Yeah, that fire ants are painful and pesky. And which sentence contains the main idea? A, number 1. Number 1. The fire ants are painful and destructive pests. All right. Right. Here you have that other device. You could probably do that on your own where you can organize, play around with looking at sentences and how you can break them up, or looking at paragraphs and seeing how you can divide them up in order to find the topic, the main idea. Like I said, on the test, you will not have the time to do all of this, but in your brain, you need to conceptually kind of try and figure out how you can do that, finding a method to play around with those ideas. All right, finding significant details. These details explain, develop, and support the main idea. They give examples, they give more specifics, and you have major ones and minor details, and some that summarize. So a brief, clear restatement of the most important points of a passage. And so these are some of the things that they do. They define, they describe, they give examples, they show characters, they show setting or tone, they give reason for an opinion. So all of these are the developed aspects of the paragraph that you'll be given. And then how to find the significant details. Of course, you're asking yourself some other questions, like what information helps make the author's point? Like, what do they use to back up their position on a particular issue? What support are they given? Who, what, when, where, why, and how? Those typical questions. How is this working out? What are they saying? How are they emphasizing their point? They may use some transitions, and we can look at transitional phrases, right? Of how they're using transitions. They may not use these, first, second, third. Also, they may use however, right? Which would indicate contrast. They may use in addition. That would mean a list or indicate a list. So there's several different transitions that they would use. You should be identifying those. Here's some more work on major detail support. We're going to move forward to tone. Oh, we actually did tone, but those are some more tone words that you can identify as well. I want to go to inferences, because that's probably your most difficult of all of them, right? This is not a right there kind of a question. Right. So we have here this binary here. The fact is a specific detail that is based on objective proof. What kind of objective proof are they giving here? That was either discovered or stated, versus an opinion, whether or not there's some subjective information that was either created or interpreted and cannot be verified. You're getting a lot of information in these passages, so you're making inferences based on these facts. This is one method you can use to try and figure out how to evaluate or how to deal with an inference question. And so the one is V, verify and value the facts presented. Do they have or have they presented some facts here? Assess prior knowledge, so that this is definitely not an opinion, and assess if you know anything about that particular issue and whether or not it makes sense logically. Learn from the text, so rely on the information from the text. So use those context clues, the information that's surrounding that particular topic that they are asking you to make an inference for. I, investigate for bias. Are there any other reasons why that would not be a correct response? And then lastly, detect contradictions. So those last two are very similar. So you're trying to validate those. Let's go to how to make an inference or draw a conclusion. So observe all the facts or the arguments and information. You're not going to have time to do all of that, right? But you are going to have time to possibly take a second to think about whether or not these facts are presented properly. Consider what you already know. So think about some prior knowledge that you're bringing to this. These are things that you could all be jotting down and referring to while you're reading the passage. When faced with multiple choice answers, determine whether each is true or false based on the information in the passage. And then you have an example here. You want to look out for these if phrases, and I believe we've noticed some of those in some of the passages. And to remember at the bottom, most writing suggests more than it says. By making inferences, you get more from the particular story or the passage. Conclusions may be missing from the things you read, so you have to draw your own conclusions. This one is one that you should definitely spend some time practicing. So let's try these 3 questions on, is that page 12, where it says practice activities, the turn or almost wished section. See if we can draw these inferences on that page. Okay, good for this. What do we have for number 1? Yes, C. So it doesn't tell us specifically that he heard about a forecast, but based on the fact that he listens to the radio, that's the indication or the clue that, of course, he must have heard something about predicting rain for that day. And then number 2. B, yes, so basically he was fired. I hope no one has gone through this situation before. So he was fired and she's asking him to resign. Number 3, A, yes, he's hurt. Kurt is not a very good player. Okay, we don't have to do the one on poems. Right, so now before we do the last passage, I want us to go back to the first passage, the very first NLN passage. And I'd like for you to maybe work together with a partner. If you want to, you can do this on your own. I'd like for you to take a look at each of the 12 questions and try to identify with the sheet that I handed out to you, the question-answer relationships sheet, and see if you can identify quickly what kinds of questions those are. Are they those right there questions? So it'll actually be one of the three. I think you can cross out, and sorry if you don't have any more, I'll throw it up on the screen. I do have it available on the screen. So it'll either be a right there question, a think and search, or a author and you question, right? I don't think you're going to have some of those on your own questions on the test. So see if you can identify for each question, all 12 questions, what kind of question does it, which category does it fall into? Because the idea here is that if you can identify a right here question or a right there question, you would be able to immediately go back to, because even on the electronic test, you can go back and forth from the questions and the answers. Remember, the method you have to use is reading those questions first. You do not have time. Remember, you only have about 8 minutes or even less per passage. So you don't have time to read every single word of the passage. You have to read the questions first, and then immediately as you finish reading the questions, you should go to the passage to look for them, search for those right there questions, and then go back and quickly answer those right there questions. And then you can do the searching for the other kinds of questions. Okay? So we're doing this for the first passage. The first passage. The first passage. All of them have the questions on. What do you mean? Oh, yeah, the first NLN passage, sorry. Yeah, the first NLN passage. We're doing the first I don't. Okay, there we go. Okay. What do we think about this? What I do like is that there are some clearly, there's some right there questions that if you were reading these questions first, then going back to the passage immediately, that there's some questions that you could off that those questions or find those questions. Which ones do that were right there? Definitely three, which is the problem. Implicitly see it in the passage, so if you see that, that should stand out to you, and then you should quickly look at it, jot down quickly, or try to abbreviate whatever these topics are, and go back to the passage. Quickly, whatever. And, yeah, and is right there according to the passage. Two, I saw it right there as well. Number four, I saw it right there as well. Exactly where to go with the fourth paragraph. That's probably the first question that I exactly. Right. But at least then you got to look at but they're giving you the context clue, right? So then you got to go to user context. Oh, of course. Of course there's context clue. What is it? Yeah, exactly. So it's there, you just have to know what to look for. Right? And that's the whole point of it. If you know that there's a context clue in there, then that's what you need help. You already know where it's located. That minute is going to go by very quickly. Go in there, look for that context clue, and that's what you need help find the right answer. If you have no idea as to what systemic means, at least you're able to draw on that context. That's the only thing you have. Only life on any you have at that point. If you get it, then fine. If not, make an educated guess and move on. Another thing we found in research is that not all questions are great. Not all the questions are actually allocated towards the grade. So a portion of that answer, you don't know which ones. So you have to answer each question. Yeah. I don't know how they would do it. Yeah, yeah, that's something you have to do. All right, what else? Are there any author and me, obvious author and me questions? 6. I put 12. Very good. 8. Yeah, I exactly which question? So what I would do that, one of those is the distraction. B is the distraction. So what you have to go back and find out is, are they are they giving examples of how to identify who has right? Yeah. Ask yourself that. All right. Any other questions about this? This is just one method that we thought would help you to be able to quickly identify what those right there questions are versus the ones that you have to search for. Another thing that you could do is look at the ones that are going to be inferences. So, for example, where was the eight is an inference. You know that is going to be a little bit harder. 6 is going to be a little bit harder, right? So you've got to put a little bit more time in those. But the ones, the bottom line is the ones that you can quickly point to and get that answer, that right answer, the fastest. Those are the ones you want to do first. And then if you have time, spend time on those inference questions, the ones where you have to search and think and process and analyze. Because you don't have time to do all. Yeah, these are things that you can look for with inference. Judgment, for words, for balance. Oh, this is an example of what an inference might be. Look, yeah, I wanted you to see these test-taking tips. This is kind of the method of attack that we thought would work best for dealing with the test questions. So there are 6 to 7 passages with about 12 questions each, 60 questions in total. Step 1 is the step that we use. Skim the passage. You can skim the passage if you want, but I would, like I said, look at those questions first. Read the questions and answer options, then scan the passage for as many answers as you possibly can find. Then go back to read the passage carefully and deal with those remaining questions that are more of the search questions and author. Lay your eyes on that first one is to just lay your eyes on the passage first. For those of you who have taken it, when the question comes up, does the passage appear first? Or does the passage appear? Are they side by side? Okay, so that's perfect. That's perfect. So then. And the vocabulary questions are separated. Separate by themselves. Yeah. They're not in contact. Yeah. So definitely looking at those groups, those prefixes, and those suffixes, and trying to understand how those work is something that we would definitely do. All right, let's take a look at the last passage. Now that you learned all that you need to learn, right? You got all the information in your hand, in your brain. But you still need to work, right? There's still a lot of work to do.
have 2 minutes. One minute. Okay, that's time. That would have been maybe like 2 passages. Taking this over again, what I did, I read the first couple of paragraphs just to kind of get a sense of what the passage was about, and then try to take my time to see particular answers, and then into the questions. I think that would really work. I mean, I was able to answer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that we can update that information. If you have any questions, I'll be here for the next time.
Really? Yes. Oh, these will help with the reading comprehension. This is supposed to tell everyone this too. Academic Support Center. It's in the library. They're open now. Yes. I didn't. Math was really be lost if I did the math. Yeah, so no, they have a math. Oh yeah, there's. You take classes here? Oh, you're not taking classes.
Yes. Or there's there are English people there as well. All of these scholars, you all are like,
We'll let you know.
Shayla, what are you doing?
Been wanting to come up there to you for the longest. I told you I have to wait until you finish with the people.
Y'all went to the other event?
Yeah, but Teresa came with us. You didn't see when she came? Yeah, she did say you didn't even look back here. But it's left after the speaker.
Oh, the speaker already spoke? Did they have anything else?
We're getting ready to give out awards.
They didn't have any other, things?
Yeah. Shayla. don't
Shayla,
say-
come over here.
I wanted to have this. Oh, you'll see the program.
Definitely, tell them people what to do. Here, why don't you write on this one? I had, surgery done on my foot today.
When?
At 3 o'clock.
Today? What? You had to do something with it?
Well, I had a